It's been quite a while since I uploaded, but that was because I intend to stick to a particular schedule, one that I could maintain now that classes are ever so drawing near. It will be June 8th by the time I upload this video, and an odd realization has dawned upon me. That with each passing month, new opportunities for more deeper introspection present themselves. This will be one of those moments where I go further into discussion. For the longest time, we have admired great works that present the monster. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, Dracula by Bram Stoker. Even those Greek myths like Asterion and Medusa are worth noting. Literary inventions of the greatest semblance that humanizes what is considered monstrous. Likewise, these stories also reflect the otherness in what would have otherwise been perceived as humanly innate. Yet, I often get the feeling that there is a more secluded aspect within this monstrosity in literature. Perhaps some monsters are more than just a tragedy, a quest for revenge, or just a representation of pure evil. That maybe these monsters I'm about to tell you are the facets within the human soul, clawing their way out of the dirt whence they came, knocking upon their doors, appearing and begging to be seen. In this video, I will be discussing in depth 3 books that I have read in May that have a commonality between them. So within the plot of these individual novels, we see, or rather, we read of monsters that are accompanying the protagonists in order to achieve their own resolutions within the novel. We have Hungerstone by Kat Dunn, My Darling Dreadful Thing by Johanna Van Veen, and A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. When was the last time we have asked ourselves, what do we truly want? To be truly confronted with the need that for the longest time was never satiated. What do you hunger for? And what will it take until you satisfy these urges? If you have seen the film The Witch or have read the classic novel Carmilla by Sheridan Le Fanu, then really do yourself the favor and read Hungerstone by Kat Dunn. With a dark and decadent prose paired with seductive atmosphere, this novel offers a gripping retelling of Carmilla, brimming with feminine rage. The story revolves around Lenore, trapped in a loveless marriage to steel magnate Henry, whose ambitions lead them into the dreary and dilapidated Nethershaw Manor. With decades of disappointment and a terrible hidden secret, Lenore is left starving for something more. This hunger of hers seemingly summons something out of the ether, in the form of Carmilla. After a mysterious carriage accident much like that of Lenore's traumatic past, Carmilla enters her life, alluring her to abandon all that she has once thought of herself. As Carmilla awakens a deep hunger within Lenore, strange incidents begin to accumulate. Young girls in nearby villages begin to fall ill, consumed by a bloody thirst that hints at a much darker truth. Dunn masterfully crafts a gothic tale with perfectly measured pacing, adding to the slow-burn romance between Lenore and Carmilla. The central theme of hunger bleeds through every page, exploring female oppression, rage, and desire that refuses to be tamed. Lenore's internal conflict lies between reclaiming her autonomy or to conform to society's expectations in order to survive. Ambition within the novel threatens to consume the being, yet presents a necessary catalyst for liberation. Lenore rids herself of the poison that is being continually fed to her, both literally and figuratively, with Carmilla acting as an antidote to a sickness that ails her. I absolutely devoured this book, and not a moment nor word is wasted. Every page, every chapter just drips with the right tension, leaving the reader with a certain taste that could never be forgotten. What resides in the darkest recesses of one's mind? Is it truly there, or is it a product of a damaged and neglectful upbringing? If you have seen the film Crimson Peak or have read the novel Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, I guarantee that you will love this novel to bits. Johanna van Veen's My Darling Dreadful Thing is an artful balance of sensational Gothic writing. The plot hooks the reader from the beginning with a grim and yet gripping confrontation of questioning whether or not the protagonist is an unreliable narrator. This is a sapphic tale inspired by the master of the macabre, Edgar Allan Poe, and the elements which the novel serves to embody is the perfect Gothic backdrop. With the terrors of a dilapidated and decaying life, Rose and Agnes find solace in one another, having shared a bond with their spirit companions that only they themselves can see. Both of them are vessels for the reader to explore the lasting impact of trauma on the human psyche, each bearing wounds that shape their perceptions and behaviors in profound ways. Through these characters, Van Veen demonstrates how past trauma is not simply an event that occurs, but an ongoing process that continues to shape one's identity, a metaphorical ghost that takes shape within yourself. We see their spirit companions as an embodiment of loneliness, functioning as a driving force in its own right. There is a certain instinct in which Rose acts upon, which would result to terrible events that transpire within the book. Her desperation and anxiety leads her to do whatever it takes just to keep Agnes happy, and by extension, for her to not be abandoned. We found out from a series of recording sessions that the fate of these characters is one akin to a beautifully doomed tragedy, where one is left alone to pick up the pieces of loss. My Darling Dreadful Thing is not just a novel about love in its most natural sense, but also one that dares to talk about the harshness of it that we cling to so much, that we would defy even reality and sanity just to fulfill a yearning that was never have known to exist within ourselves. How does one come to truly grasp with grief and the loneliness that comes with the denial of losing someone? What comes walking and waking when one refuses to acknowledge that hurtful truth? There are tales, lies really, according to the monster anyway, that we often tell ourselves to console our own contradictions. 7 minutes after midnight, a voice beckons out from the cold. Walking to the window, Connor meets the monster who called. But what he is not right at that moment is afraid. Because there was something else more real, more damning than that of the yew tree outside of his window. For how this monster was summoned, Connor does not yet know. It was called and it came waking, for it must tell of 3 tales, to which our protagonist must provide the 4th, and it must be his truth. Through the tales that were told, we see that the monster not only as a witness, but also acting as a greater representation within them, echoing the message that things are not always what they seem. The prince isn't always the ideal moralistic hero. A man of principle breaks his belief to save his loved ones. Being seen can just be as worse as being invisible. And finally, letting go does not mean you wish them gone. This novel presents itself simply yet beautifully, the 5 stages of grief. Connor clings on to the life he has at home. He does not want to leave the house where he has built his entire life with his mother. He keeps having the same nightmare and he suppresses his fears. Connor denies and outright refuses to acknowledge the approaching inevitability of death. In his anger, Connor wishes punishment for the shame he feels, for how powerless he felt in the face of the reality he refuses to acknowledge. When the second and third tale are told, we are led to believe, along with the protagonist, that the yew tree, the monster, could heal Connor's mother from cancer. It is as if, though, we are bargaining alongside him, telling ourselves that maybe it would heal her. Otherwise, what was the point? Why was the monster cold to waking? The moment arrives when Connor has to tell the fourth tale, the truth he has been hiding close to heart and yet refuses to acknowledge. The very nightmare we were told of appears before our very eyes. We see the graveyard from outside of Connor's house. Suddenly, without warning, a dark crevasse opens from below. This symbolizes the hopelessness and depression we have seen from Connor. His mother falls and Connor desperately holds onto her. Eventually, he lets go. At the end of the novel, Connor tells his truth with acceptance. He didn't want his mother to die and leave him all alone, but he knows that the pain and suffering she endures is far worse. He does not want her gone, but he wished it would be over for her sake. We even see the film adaptation that Connor gets to live with his grandmother, and part of this acceptance is for him to start his life and live through her remembrance. This book moved and enlightened me of what it means to accept, or rather the concept that acceptance is coming to terms with not wanting that unspoken truth. Holding on to the weight never really is easy, and so is waiting for some punishment or retribution that bears no absolute purpose. Stories hurt, stories heal. This is what A Monster Calls is about. Monsters in fiction are larger than life. We, as the readers, often see ourselves as the only ones gifted with an understanding, an oversight, since we are outside of the world in which they inhabit, where no other person could possibly consider them human. It goes to show how these characters that accompany our protagonists, or in some cases even the protagonists themselves, are more than just monsters. They are the extensions of us, the reader, and to the hero or anti-heroes of the story. Carmilla brings out Lenore's dark side and hunger to free her of her oppressive life. Ruth showed up in one of Ruse's darkest moments, hoping to bear some of that burden. And the monster in the yew tree came calling when Connor needed healing from his grief. Every time I read of how these beings represent something within ourselves, it goes full circle. We understand what is unknown, and within the process, we get to understand something within ourselves. Thank you so much, and see you on your next read.